Türkiye Enerji Stratejileri ve Politikaları Araştırma Merkezi, kısa adıyla TESPAM Başkanı Oğuzhan Akyener.
Hem hidrokarbon hem yenilenebilir noktasında Türkiye birçok alanda yerli kaynaklarını kullanma konusunda önemli adımlar atıyor ve atmaya devam ediyor.
Ulusal bazda enerji probleminin çözülmesi için bence lokal bazda kendi enerjisini kendi üreten şehirler haline gelmemiz gerekiyor.
Evet, kıymetli TV Enerji takipçileri, TESPAM takipçileri, Türkiye Enerji Stratejileri ve Politikaları Araştırma Merkezi'nin düzenlemiş olduğu yeni bir panelle karşınızdayız.
Biz burada bunları göstererek uluslararası politikadaki etkilere değinmeye çalışıyoruz. OPEC toplantısına kadar diğer etmenlerin neredeyse etkisi sıfırdı.
18 milyar dolarla bu gazı siz Yunanistan'a ulaştırmış oluyorsunuz.
Irak'ın Aydınlık Yüzü Türkmenli Televizyonu'ndan merhabalar. Enerji Analiz programının yeni bölümünde karşınızdayız.
TESPAM Başkanı ve enerji uzmanı Oğuzhan Akyener bugün burada bizimle.
Lakin Türkiye'nin bu noktada hakları ihlal edilmeye çalışılıyor.
Enerji hattında bu haftaki konumuz TESPAM Başkanı Oğuzhan Akyener'di.
Kendi alanında, ya bu sondaj ve sismik gibi alanlarda yerli teknolojiyi geliştiriyor, yerli know-how'u geliştiriyor. Bu da çok önemli.
להתחיל אני בקסטייג', יש את אורין שפלר, אני ישנו.
Guests, this is another event of the TESPAM. Today we will discuss on the main topic of East Mediterranean. and we have several sessions, and the first session will be based on the maritime conflicts. We are trying to establish a perspective of academic and civil initiative to build up some mutual benefits on the region. And that's why we have some guests from HMS institution, Mr. Shaul Shorev and Mr. Orin Şefer, and our Yücel Acar from the Yıldırım Beyazıt University. We would like to share some different views, different academic views on alternative ideas on the issues. So I would like to introduce Mr. Shorev Shaul first to make the speech. For time being, he's together with us in the very beginning, from the very beginning. So, Mr. Shaul, Mr. Shaul.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm trying to share the screen because I have some kind of a presentation. See if I can do this.
Okay, you can share it with us.
Let's see.
So, today the panelists are especially in the academic area and the Middle East, of course, together with the East Mediterranean issues. So we would like to have a different perspective from another academic institution and from another university. With this opportunity, I would like to thank the Haifa University and HMS director to do this beneficial, useful study and share it their studies with us. Mr. Shaul, have you?
I haven't yet succeeded to share the screen. Let's see. No, I'm not.
Okay, you can send the files to us.
No, I'll go without presenting it, but let's try again. And if I'll not succeed, no, I can't see it. So I'll do it without the transparency, and let's try to see how it will go. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, we see it now. The floor is yours.
Okay, that's
yes, please, Mr. Shaul.
So first of all, I would like to thank you very much to the two organizers for inviting us, HMS, to attend this conference. And I would like to mention that despite the unfavorable developments that have taken place in the recent weeks in Turkish-Israeli relations, we think that the continued cooperation and collaboration between TESPAN and HMS is doubly important, and we intend to continue to maintain this cooperation. I think this is a part of improving this relationship. The theme of my presentation is the Mediterranean Red Sea or Middle Ocean as crucial waterways in Israeli perspective. I have only recently studied this theme of Middle Ocean state. The Mediterranean is not an ocean and the Red Sea is not an ocean, but I participated in conference in Trieste, and they tried to emphasize the link between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean, and I think that it's very actual for Israel. First of all, this is our first Prime Minister, Mr. Ben-Gurion, and he mentioned that anyone who understands our geographic reality and its economic and political implications will immediately grasp the value of our sea power for our existence. And here, when we are speaking about economic, especially gas, energy, it's the name of the game. You can see what is Israel's total reliance on the sea trade and on the sea. Here is our EEZ, and with dot lines, as you mentioned, we haven't yet settled our delimitation of the maritime border with our Lebanese partners, as well as with Egypt and the Gaza Strip. But I should mention that most of our trade, about 99%, is going by sea. And currently, the energy, the gas is coming from the sea, from the exclusive economic zone area. So surprisingly, the maritime domain is almost absent from the public discourse in Israel, and that's one of our aim, the HMS, to try and to advocate for it. With regard to Israel, we are like a middle ocean state, but we are also like an island in the region. And the two seas that have long represented critical links to the global network of waterways, namely the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, stretching from the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean and providing from both strategic and economic access, as you can see it here. Going back to our history, it was not rival because when we finished our independence war in 48, we didn't allow to go through the Suez Canal, even though the Kushta agreement allowed it to do it. And only when we had a peace treaty with Egypt in 79, we were allowed to go through the Suez Canal, because most of Israel import and export is done from our Mediterranean ports. The Eilat port, I'll speak about it later, is only about 5% of all this import-export. So open of this Suez Canal is very important for Israel. There is an open issue and controversial decision to transfer the sovereignty over the Red Sea islands of Tiran, which is to the entrance of Gulf of Aqaba, might cause us some problems. But if you look here, the major wars fought by Israeli in its first decades, the Sinai War of 56 and the 6 Days War of 67, were mostly terrestrial campaigns. However, both were caused by Egypt's closure of these Tiran Straits, which lead to the Gulf of Aqaba. Nowadays, we have another problem, and that's with the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, which control the passage from the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden into the Far East. And in our history, when we had a good relation with Iran, we imported from there oil, and in 71, one of the tankers going through the Suez Canal, through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, was hit by rockets by a terrorist organization. And also in the Yom Kippur War, the Egyptian Navy exercised an undeclared but effective naval blockade in this area. So when I'm speaking about choke points like Suez Canal, like Strait of Tiran and Bab el-Mandeb, it's very interesting for Israel, because if you look here, you can see that our import from the Far East, it's reaching about 30%. So we can't ignore it, and we need that we will have a freedom of navigation. Fortunately, and I think that Mr. Aguzan mentioned it in the beginning, we have some kind of a peace agreement, first with Egypt, then in Jordan. We are very happy about the Abraham Accords declaration that we have with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. And we are looking to see what will happen with Sudan and maybe Saudi Arabia. and Oman, because for us, being partners in this region, and you mentioned it, and a good relation with our neighbors will give us also the sense that we can use the trade and all such a thing in this area. Another issue is the Central Command that absorbed Israel into its area of responsibility. And for Israel, it's very important because you can see that when we are looking about what is happening about the choke points, namely Suez Canal, especially Bab el-Mandeb, the Strait of Hormuz, there is a tendency of weaponization of a choke points. And I think the terrorist organization and some hook states understand that when they control the entrance to such like the Red Sea or the Persian Gulf, they can have the power to stop this traffic and freedom of navigation. Containerization and the increased value of volume goods being transported all serve to highlight the potential disruption which can arise in certain ports and particular maritime crossing. And you can see this demonstration, it was not a terrorist attack, it was an accident, but the effect of the Ever Given incident in the Suez Canal in the spring of 2021 and how it's affect the logistic lines give us an example what will happen if such a phenomena will be adopted also in other choke points by terrorist organizations, RAG states, all such a stream. So the disruption of trade could easily throw global food supplies and energy markets into disarray, as well as plunge conflict zone into political chaos. And I should mention it because for Israel, it became very, very hectic problem. Iran's strategic location and controlling the entrance to the Persian Gulf or the Gulf is causing us a problem. And I can show you that Iran can intervene and influence the security of the Gulf and the international shipping of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking here about last incident that Israel has, even though all the cases that I'm presenting here are not a direct Israeli company, but they belong to Israeli businessmen, first of all, the Helios Ray, and you can see here in the Persian Gulf, coming with cars from Singapore to the Gulf states, attacked by Olympic mine. A month later, the MV Lorry in this area, the same, and Helio Ray in April. But the most severe one happened in July 2021 with the Merced Suite, which sailed here, and it was attacked by a UAV twice, in the 29 and in the 13. And it is a ship that's flagged in a Liberian, in Japanese-owned and managed by an Israeli-owned Zodiac company. And the investigation saw us that it was twice attacked by UAV, and it caused a damage to the ship. It also caused two casualties with Romanian and British citizens who were on board. And the strike on the Merced Street, they were done by IRGC, and it's a severe escalation that might affect all the freedom of navigation of all this area. Speaking about the Middle Ocean state and the threat that we have, we know that the entrance to the Red Sea and Djibouti, and it's affected also by piracy and robbery, armed robbery. And we see here that there were two kind of attempts to harm the shipping in this area. And I should mention once again that if 30% of Israeli import is coming here, we are also immune to these dangers and threat in this area. And last but not least, and I know that next time we will speak about Chinese, we can see when we are speaking about Belt and Road initiatives that the Chinese are coming here into Djibouti in order to protect the line of their communication. But when we are speaking about power, we are speaking about this as a soft power affecting this area. And the Chinese are here to sit here and to have a permanent base in this area. I would like to end up with some reflection on the challenges facing Israel as a Middle Ocean state. First, the Red Sea and the Mediterranean and Eastern Mediterranean are cauldron of potential maritime challenges from Israel, and we should mention both of them as one unit because one affects the other. Coping requires a change of consciences. And Israel interests are maintaining open sea line of communications and identifying vital maritime transportation concern in emergency situation. Developing a concept of the Eastern Mediterranean as being within Israel's strategic depth, energy and other things is very essential for us. And securing the line of communication in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden is very important as Israel as a Middle Ocean state. And a few final remarks and not conclusion. The probability of decisive combat at sea is decreasing and more probable scenarios for littoral asymmetric hybrid warfare at sea and increase in the Navy constabulary and being missions. Cyber domains know no borders and evolve at fast pace. And the component of sea in the security as a resilience of Israel has been augmented significantly in the last decade. Some of the challenges can be made by national action, but many others will require international cooperation with like-minded nations in the region as well as the world. And I look at what we are doing here with Turkey as a partner that we have to decrease the sense or the atmosphere of hostility and speak, as you started, Turkey as a partner here to have some kind of cooperation in energy and other things. Along with many risks, there are also many opportunities of which Israel should take an advantage. And I think that this conference is one of the opportunities that we have here. And I would like once again to thank the organizers. And I think that despite the unfavorable developments that have taken place in the recent years in Turkish-Israeli relations, we think that the continued cooperation between TESPAM and HMS is doubly important, and we intend to continue to maintain this cooperation. Thank you very much.
We thank you very much, Mr. Jorev. It was very briefing presentation, and you give a good background of the regional situation. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Gözegildi from Ankara University to give us some other way of other side, from Turkish side of East Mediterranean situation. And now, Ms. Gözegildi, can you hear me? Your microphone is closed. Yes, it's okay now.
My presentation.
Okay, if you share it with us, we will publish.
Did you see my presentation? No.
Not yet.
See?
Maybe it needs some uploading period. That's why we are some delaying the presentations on the screen.
Is that okay now?
Still not yet. I think it's, yes, that's okay now.
It's okay.
I'm giving the floor.
Is it okay now?
And yes, it's okay now.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to giving thanks to my their colleagues and TESPAM, which organized this valuable conference. It is really very glad for me. My topic is related to maritime conflicts and energy cracks in the Eastern Mediterranean. So before starting to my presentation, I would like to mention some maritime issues which we can see many problems in those areas. And we have, of course, the coastal planning on many topics, which you will see here, the maritime transports, the legal regime, the fishing, or the maritime jurisdictions, or military constraints, or the coastal and maritime tourism, and of course, the energy activities and the other things. But if we look at the region, of course, we have many conflicts over the maritime jurisdiction fields. And if you look at the latest developments, there are many risks which arising from the seas and the maritime problems, especially related to maritime borders. And of course, we have frozen conflicts in the region, and you will see here the maritime jurisdiction, the risks over the hydrocarbon competition, and also we have some problems over the energy routes. And of course, our region is have geopolitical problems. So if we look at the region, you will see these titles, which we have problems. And we have seen the counter-alliance formation and polarization in the region. And we have seen that the shifting of the NATO axis efforts to establish a new security systems, or we have seen that the increases military exercises or the search and area research or flight information region cracks. And of course, the energy security and the supply issues are very important. And if you look at the Turkey and its position, you will see that, of course, Turkey has been re-emerged in the region as political power and the military power, which has changed the dynamics of the Mediterranean. As you know, that the Greek Cypriot side put a maximalist map, which called the Sevilla, and they claim that a whole region belongs to them. But in fact, it's not reflects the realities, and it's not reflects the international law, because Turkey has published its continental shelf points and borders in the United Nations General Secretary, and also Turkey made an agreement between its neighbors such as Libya and Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, and also Turkey calling both sides to negotiate and solving the problems with dialogue. So, of course, Turkey in the region has its sovereign rights, which arising from the international customary law and a Turkish continental shelf, which is situated on its initio and ipso facto. It is stated in UNCLOS, and we have seen in many international court decisions. And of course, the land dominates sea is a big and important argument for Turkey, which is stated in many international court of justice cases. So here, I would like to concentrate the energy issues, but before starting to giving the details, as you know, that the problems related to maritime jurisdictions led to increased militarization in the seas, And we have seen that the Greek Cypriot side, or the Greece, doing many military exercises, and it has been increased since 2003. And you will see here many exercises between the many parties, which comes from the Arabs or the Western side, and they try to show some symbolic names against the Turkey, and they try to give some messages against the Turkish continental shelf rights or their jurisdiction, maritime jurisdiction rights. You will see here the many exercises, military exercises in the Eastern Mediterranean. And of course, the latest developments with the USA, the Greek and Greek Cypriot administration and the United States, doing many exercises in the region, and they have been established a strategic dialogue for the, of course, the armament and the energy security in the region. And the latest, if you look at the latest development, the Third Banias Forum has been arranged in Dubai, and you will see here the French side message, and the Egypt and the Greek Cypriot side giving more messages about this forum. Actually, this is the plan to make a new project to via West Asian states to Europe. They try to create a new project against Turkey. And their newspaper, for example, Greek Times, stressed that this project focuses on the building a corridor that connects India to the Gulf and West Asia to the Eastern Mediterranean, which will link the region to Europe and planned to be game changer against Turkey. So why those provocation steps are taken, we should ask, and we should concentrate the region for that. As you see here, some lines which try to show so-called maritime borders. At the end, you will see that the United States explanation in September 2029, which Sevilla map is not legal binding. And at the end, of course, the maritime delimitation and the maritime limit is two different arguments in international law. If you look at the maritime limit, which Greek side or the Greek Cypriots argued that the so-called borders, of course, it is an unilateral action and not binding or has international character. If you look at the Article 74 and 83 of 1, the maritime delimitation should be based on equity, which means that not violates the third party's right. And the maritime delimitation, of course, may be defined as the process of establishing lines separating the spatial ambit of coastal state jurisdictions over maritime space where the legal title overlaps with that of another state. So in the many international court of decisions, such as the case of the 1951, points out that the limitation of marine areas is always of an international dimension, so it cannot even solely on the will as stated in the municipal law of the coastal state. Why I mentioned here the municipal law? Because if you look at the Greek Cypriot side and the Greece's municipal laws, you will see here they violate the unclosed, the nature of the unclosed, because they mentioned only the one title over the delimitation. It's a median line, and they not envisage in other things which is related to related circumstances or some points over the equity. So maritime delimitation, of course, cannot be created by the unilateral act. At the end, of course, today we have seen that another provocative steps of the Greek Cypriot sides over hydrocarbon activities, which they mentioned that they will plan to continue in a next month. And you will see this latest developments over the Greek Cypriots claims, which they wanted to continue the hydrocarbon activities. So here I would like to say, of course, the Greek Cypriot site, so-called hydrocarbon plant, which publish maps, don't create real maritime borders. And you know that in many times they try to accuse Turkey. They try to make some sentences which Turkey, such as violates the international law. That is not reflects the realities, because in fact, if we would like to speak over the maritime delimitation, it is related to international law and it is related to agreements between the parties. So if the Greek side or the Greek Cypriot side only show a map without any consent of the Turkish Cypriots, without any solution, they try to always usurp the Turkish Cypriots sovereign rights in the region. That's why we have also another energy plans in the region. And the published maps, if we look at the international law over hydrocarbon and maritime boundaries by the Greek Cypriots, if you look at the Gulf Main case, you will see here the important sentences which taken by court. In either case, delimitation should be achieved by applying equitable criteria and using practical methods to ensure an equitable results in the geographic configuration of the zone and other relevant circumstances. So everything is clear in the international law. And also it does stress main things which maritime boundary cannot prove the existence of agreed maritime boundary, because they haven't do any agreement between us or the other neighbors, such as Turkey, because we have a problem in the Cyprus issue. And of course, the Greek Cypriot side tried to make another provocation, which they put the so-called borders to the UN. They claimed these borders, but it's not reflects the reality, because no consent of Turkish Cypriots, and of course it's an unilateral act, an illegal act, because the Cyprus issues still continue. And in the case of the hydrocarbon activities, we can divide the issue with seismic surveys and drilling activities. Turkish Cypriot side, as a state, as a sovereign site, give a permission to Turkish petroleum companies to search these areas, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and the H area. And also these lines, these sites belongs to the Turkish continental shelf. And why the Turkish Cypriot side follow this way, this policy? Because since 2003, the Greek Cypriot side tried to make unilateral steps and try to violate the Turkish continental shelf area and the Turkish Cypriot sovereign rights in the region. At the end, as you know, that those times was related to the negotiation process between the both parties, with Turkish Cypriot and the Greek Cypriot side. But always they ignore the Turkish sovereign rights, such as this is the reason why we haven't solved the Cyprus issue yet, because the Greek Cypriot sides always tries to show themselves as unique partner, unique founder of the island, and unique sovereign status they have it. But it's not reflects the realities, because there is no sovereign state in the island. Turkish Cypriot state also it's a sovereign status in the island, and they have a democratic regime. They have a state status in the context of the international law. If you look at, and if you look at here, the Greek Cypriot sides It is related to Sevilla's maximalist claims, these lines. So they never accept to negotiate the Turkish Cypriot sides the maritime issues, as even in the case of the hydrocarbon activities, Turkish Cypriot side offered a plan to negotiate the hydrocarbon activities and to establish a commission with Greek Cypriot side and to make power sharing in those areas, but they never accept this. And so we have also another problems in the region, the maritime jurisdiction problems such as the Israel-Lebanon dispute or the Israel-Palestine dispute or another countries which they should establish the adjacent or the opposite maritime borders between them. On the other side, if you look at the region, another provocative steps actually try to establish against Turkey and the Turkish Cypriot rights. For example, the İsmet pipeline agreement. You will see they plan to a new pipeline project which lying from Israel and its Greek Cypriot side to Italy and the Europe. So in the case of this pipeline project, if we look at the international law and the customary law and the UNCLOS even, of course here in the UNCLOS 79 states that all states are entitled to lay submarine cables and pipelines on the continental shelf in accordance with the provision of the article, but the delineation of the course for the laying of such pipelines on the continental shelf is subject to the consent of the coastal state. This is very important because Turkey has published its continental shelf coordinates in the UN, United Nations General Secretary, and of course Turkish continental shelf area is existence here. And in the case of the pipeline project or the cable project, they should offer the plan to Turkey, and also they should make a cooperation and they should receive the consent from the Turkey, but they never try to make this consent. So we have seen the same situations in the interconnected cable project from related to Euro-Asia and to Euro-Africa. And of course, some provocative steps on the NAPTEX and NOTAM is continuous.
Sorry, interrupt, Mehmet Hocam. We should use the time.
Okay, I will try to finish in 1 minute. Okay.
Convenient. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. And at the end, if you look at the ISMET, of course, it's a semi-enclosed region, and the cooperation of the state is very important. And if you look at the UNCLOS criteria or the international customary law, of course, the cooperation between the states over the maritime activities is necessary. And Turkey always called the both sides to make dialogue and negotiation to solving the problems. And the energy activities and the energy plans, of course, cannot be pursued without Turkey consent, and Turkey always try to its goodwill policies over the energy issues. And at the end, we have seen that the other neighbors, such as the Greece or the Greek Cypriot sides or the Egypt's policies, always consist of the provocative steps against Turkey and the Turkish Cypriots in the region. So thank you very much for that conference. Yes.
We thank you very much for your comprehensive approach for the due diligence of the legal side of the area. And from your presentation, we picked that Sevilla study is an academic study, and this is not an international approved agreement, and it's not a legal issue to be applied in the region. So this your examples from the rest of the world makes us enlightened on the issue that there could be equal rights solution regarding the other conflicts solved in the world, in the other maritime issues. We thank you very much, and I'd like to give floor to Orin, Mr. Scheffler, together with other guests. We see some alternative routes, alternative projects on the area as well. The floor is yours. I give the mic. Your mic is off, by the way. Can you open your mic, please? Microphone.
Yes, you should be hearing me now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I will hear you.
And you can also see the presentation? Yes.
Yes, we see it now.
Okay, so I can't see myself, but
go to presentation mode. Go to presentation. We see it only in it's not presentation mode.
Can you see now?
Yes, but go to presentation mode. Now you are not in presentation mode.
Okay, I have. That is, you should be seeing it now.
Yes, push on it and then it's okay.
Okay. Great. So my name is
Full
Orin.
screen. Yes, please.
Okay. I have developed an expertise on the law of the sea. Thank you for the previous presentation, which is very accurate and shows the many different views and perspectives on.
Sorry, Orin. Sorry, Mr. Scheffler. Can you open your volume some little bit? Your microphone is low, I think. If it is available, if it is possible, yes, please. Yes, we hear you. You can.
Hello, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we hear you. Yes, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I will start by introducing 4 pillars to the debate. The first leads to, there's a lot of background noise. Okay, there you go. Can you hear me? Go like this if you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Yes, you can go.
Okay, fine. So there are 4 pillars.
It's okay now.
Okay, there are 4 pillars to this discussion with respect to Israel and Turkey. The traditional positions are clear. The interpretations, the disagreements are known. The problem is that they lead to deadlock, and they're very difficult to resolve. They are based on interpretation, views, understandings, and interests. So we need to be creative, and we need to find different ways to address the issues and to reach agreements to avoid the regular deadlocks. There are 4 ways we can do this. First, we need to build a new trust between the nation of Israel and the nation of Turkey. Then we need to identify areas of mutual interests, which are areas which we can work together on. The third is we need to establish very strong and sustaining partnerships so that we can actually get to work. And then we need to identify projects of common interest. We need to take practical measures, and we need to start work. The only way to do this is to avoid conflict and misunderstanding on matters that are probably insolvable. So, how do we build trust? That is the easy part. First of all, Israel and Turkey have 400 years at least of mutual history. Israel and Turkey had a proven track record of mutually beneficial cooperation. The most recent would probably be the Golden Age between 2001 and 2010. An area in which we have great potential to reach understandings are actually matters pertaining to the law of the sea. Specifically, because both Turkey and Israel are not signatories to UNCLOS, we're a very exclusive group. It's only us and the US and a few other countries that have taken this position. Therefore, each country is positioned to interpret the law of the sea outside the constraints of UNCLOS as they see fit, based on independent interpretations on the law of the sea, which is clearly the basis for an agreement between two countries that are not signatories to the law of the sea. Also, Israel and Turkey are both countries that have withstood years of international pressure and therefore have developed independent capabilities and can manage their interests by themselves very effectively. Also, both countries have excellent project execution capabilities and financing capabilities, which is crucial for developing actual infrastructure projects in the sea. Also, and this is especially true for the TRNC, each party is regionally isolated, under pressure, but must, against all odds, achieve energy security. This is a vital interest to both Turkey and Israel. But also, to build trust, we must all agree, at least in this room, that there is room in the Middle East for everyone. It's not us or them, it's us and them. The second pillar is identifying mutual interests. Once we have trust, we need to see what we can do together. So the first pillar is to allow access to developing offshore projects and the projects thereto. This can promote energy security for Turkey. When I say products, I mean hydrocarbons, natural gas, oils, and other liquid or gas byproducts that are found in the sea. The second item is to allow access to the cash flow that is derived from offshore hydrocarbon development. This is also a key issue when you come to develop projects. Can you see me? Yes. Number 3, promoting regional influence and improving geostrategic positioning, which is very important for the state of Turkey, and it is happening for Israel, mainly because of Israel's reassessment of its position with respect to the sea. Increasing international trade. Another mutual interest which can be achieved is either to stall parallel projects that entail certain threat perception to Turkey or Israel, or alternatively, joining such projects as partners and not foes. All of this will allow developing new dialogue with regional players. It will allow addressing matters pertaining to China and their influence on maritime port infrastructure, which is a vital interest to Turkey. It will address Russia's influence through energy supplies to Turkey. It will allow free and safe shipping between Turkey and Libya, and perhaps address issues pertaining to maritime border delimitation. It will allow influence on matters pertaining to the reconstruction of Lebanon, to resolving the conflict in Syria, to addressing gas imports from Azerbaijan, to building ties to old foes like the UAE, and also to help Turkey establish themselves as a patron to the Palestinian cause. Also, Turkey could achieve influence, backdoor influence, on the EU, on Cyprus, on Greece, the US, and the UAE, which can enable Turkey to promote its issues to them. And for Israel, perhaps unofficial backdoor dialogue and matters pertaining to Iran, which is one of Israel's vital national security influences. The third pillar, establishing new and strong partnerships. Partnerships, as I said at the beginning, have to be based on trust, transparency, mutual benefit, and interest. But also, they have to be designed metaphorically to withstand hurricanes, tornadoes, and earthquakes. What I mean is, they have to be strong enough to stay put, even if there is a war, or a flotilla, or a change in government, or any vital interest that changes in the middle of the partnership's activity. They also need to be able to solve problems on their own, sit down around the table and reach an agreement without involving third parties. And at all times, they have to remain beneficial, profitable, even when there are competing interests and disagreements. And they also have to have set goals, and they have to be achievable without any background noise. There are two examples of very strong partnerships that have withstood these tests. The first, an Israel-Turkey partnership, which we call the Dorat power plant, which is a power plant established near the border with Gaza in the south of Israel. It is owned by EAPC, the Elat Ashkelon or Europe Asia Pipeline Company, Zorlu, which is a very large Turkish energy group from Turkey, and Edeltek, which is a prominent business establishment in Israel. It generates 840 megawatts. It came online in 2010, right at the time when Israel-Turkish relations went sour, but yet here it stands. This power plant has plans to increase its capacity by 600 megawatts. And after the 2016 reconciliation agreement between Israel and Turkey, there are plans to build more jointly owned power plants. So this puts Turkey in a position to be on the buy side to enable projects of mutual interest for them and the Palestinians in Israel. Another example of a strong partnership is the EMG gas pipeline, which is a small subsea pipeline from Israel to Egypt, which has withstood two revolutions. It has withstood international arbitration proceedings and is currently owned by Chevron and partners, and is now being reused from its original purpose. When it was built, it was designed to import gas from Egypt to Israel, and is now being used to export gas from Israel to Egypt. So the long term, this partnership has proven to be very, very solid. These are projects which have gone beyond political and diplomatic disputes and have withstood all the tests and have come out profitable. These are examples of how we can work together. Looking ahead and putting aside the difficulties, there are many, many maritime projects that can be undertaken by Israel and Turkey. First of all, Israel and Turkey, not being signatories to the law of the sea, can absolutely reach bilateral agreements with regards to delimitation of maritime borders. Also, Israel and Turkey and partners can embark on the development of cross-border oil and gas offshore field developments, because both Israel and Turkey have the ability to finance major maritime projects. Past officials and future officials may discuss plans to initiate a gas pipeline to Turkey, which is a major national security interest for Turkey. Or if a pipeline route is non-feasible, building offshore FLNG or hydrogen infrastructure and allowing access to the product and cash flow for these projects as partners. We can also discuss new power plants, such as the Dorad power plant. We can discuss maritime security issues with regard to sea crossings from Turkey to Libya. We can discuss port infrastructure. There are many in Turkey that are looking at the tenders for managing port infrastructure in Israel. These are things that can be discussed. And of course, a major issue that Turkey has undertaken is the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, providing water, desalination, and other crucial infrastructure for Gaza. Now is the time to build, perhaps even building artificial islands or other jointly owned infrastructure for the benefit of Gaza. This is only a partial list of what we can do together if we establish trust, identify mutual interests, and get to work, putting aside the traditional interpretations on the law of the sea. I would like to just finally end with a quote from our late President Shimon Peres, who wrote in his book that there is no room for small dreams. So I'll leave us with that. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we finally get some approaches on the way of making cooperative works in the area. Of course, you mentioned as 400 years, but we expected more than a millennium for the trust background. On the other hand, there is room for everyone is a good approach for the region, because all the regional countries need power, and they all have lack of something. But when we put everything together, we will have the good cake at the end. So I thank Orin to give us this useful approach for doing some more business with Israel. On the other hand, maybe for your last page of the presentation, we may add some electrical cable power projects as well. As we saw in the previous presentation of Ms. Gözge Güzelli, there are some alternates, additional alternates as well. So this cooperative way of approach will benefit all the regional countries, and as well as the people who are living in the region. And it seems that maybe 8-country power agreement of countries in the region can be applied to this natural gas issue as well, because as you know, there is a ratified agreement between 8 countries on the cable power transmission that can be enhanced by just some little amendments, with some very little amendments to apply it in the natural gas projects as well. So thank you very much, Orin, for your presentation and good willings. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Acer to brief us on his presentation on the maritime conflicts and the solution possibilities. Mr. Acer, Yeah, the microphone is off, I think. Yes, yes, the microphone.
Is that okay now?
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I try to share my screen first, and then.
Yes, it's on the screen. Maybe the other one is better, the wider screen.
Okay, let me try to make it wider. You can see the PowerPoint, yeah? Can you?
Yes, we can.
Actually, I don't know how to. I think the map. I cannot change the maps anyway. That's the problem at the moment.
It's coming some seconds later.
Okay,
yes,
if I
can
okay
share
if I can share myself, maybe I can change the slides. Okay, anyway. First of all, I would like to thank TESPAM for organizing such a valuable panel on such a significant issue. Mr. Shaul has actually described how the Eastern Mediterranean is significant for Israel. And we all know that this part of the sea is also significant for all surrounding countries, including especially Turkey. My presentation is going to be basically about the international law perspective, focusing on the delimitation law. But first of all, let me describe the dispute, the so-called Eastern Mediterranean dispute, as we call in Turkey. Since we see the news about the energy resources and disputes about these possible energy resources or existing energy resources of the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, we mostly, just skip what is the basis of this dispute or disputes over the natural resources in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Let me emphasize that actually the core of the dispute is about establishing the maritime boundaries. So the dispute basically concerns how to establish the maritime boundaries in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. That's the core. That's because of this basic dispute over the maritime borders, we have the disputes or tensions about the natural resources of the area. So that shows us that we should first of all, try to solve this maritime boundary disputes in order to, peacefully, benefit from the resources of the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. So let me also describe what aspects of this maritime disputes have so far. The first aspect is that in 2003, the Greek Cypriots and Egypt signed a delimitation agreement, to which Turkey, afterwards raised the official objection. This is the start actually about the maritime boundary disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Later on, we have seen that there was an agreement between Lebanon and Greek Cypriots, and then between Greek Cypriots and Israel in 2010. actually all of them raised the Turkish objection, arguing that these maritime areas are, encroaching on the possible continental shelf of Turkey or Turkish Cypriots. These were the reasons for the objections, legal objections. This is the first part. The second part is that there are still many maritime areas that are yet to be delimited. We see the disputes between Greece and Turkey, and between Turkey and Greek Cypriots, and Turkey and Egypt. And also we see that there is an actual dispute between Israel and Lebanon about the possible maritime boundaries. So all these are actually the second aspect. We should, establish maritime boundaries in certain parts since they are yet to be delimited. So as you see, the whole context is quite complicated. There are maritime boundaries so far, delimited between certain countries with international agreements, but all of them actually have been objected to by one or more countries. Let me take the example of the agreement between Turkey and Libya, for example. This has also been objected by 3 countries: Egypt, Greece, and Syria. And also there is a very recent agreement between Greece and Egypt, and Turkey actually objected to this agreement as well. So it seems like there is nothing to be agreed on completely in the Mediterranean Sea, either on the existing maritime boundaries or possible maritime boundaries. All of them are so complicated. That's the brief, description of the so-called Eastern Mediterranean dispute. So let me move on to international law. So is it quite surprising that states are having such disputes? No, it's not really surprising at all. In all parts of the world, we have seen many similar maritime boundary disputes. So because of these disputes, international law has a very clearly set of legal principles how to, solve these maritime disputes. Unfortunately, we have a very general rule, either in customary law or in the 1982 Law of the Sea Convention, which is quite general. It says that the maritime boundary should be delimited to reach an equitable result. So nothing more than this, actually. You can see nothing more than this in the written version of the delimitation rule. That's actually was quite, difficult to apply to the actual maritime disputes. But fortunately, we have at the moment around 25 maritime cases judicially decided by International Court of Justice or arbitral tribunals, or some of them have been decided by International Law of the Sea Tribunal. So that seems that we have a very strong international jurisprudence on the maritime delimitation disputes. 25 cases is quite significant in terms of the number and in terms of the content. So we see that there are certain delimitation principles that emerge from the international jurisprudence. The first one is that, the land dominates the sea. That means you have to establish the boundary according to the coastal geography. That's the first principle. The second principle is that you shouldn't encroach on the coastal projection of a coastal country with relatively insignificant geographical features, including islands. That's the second basic principle. Another principle is that you have to also take into account non-geographical factors like energy resources or some other interests, security interests, and these kind of things. These are quite secondary, but still you should have a look at these factors as well when you are doing the delimitation process. And the final principle is that there should be a, close, equation between the ratios between the coastal length and the maritime areas you get. So it seems that you cannot get huge maritime areas if you have a very small coastline, coastal length. That's the final check, actually, whether to understand whether the limitations are equitable or not. These are the basic principles. Let me look at the islands in a very specific context, because we have these maritime areas disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea because of the islands, basically. I am sure Lebanon and Israel is going to be able to settle the dispute quite easily because there are no significantly complicating geographical features in that region. It's all about what should be the angle of this boundary between two countries, literal boundary between two countries. If we put aside the political division, I think it should be quite easier to settle the dispute, and I'm sure they will be able to settle disputes in a fairly, reasonable period of time. But if we look at the Turkish, disputes with the other countries like Greece and Greek Cypriots, they are all complicated only by one issue, which are islands. So islands are quite significant in terms of understanding the disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. As far as the islands are concerned, according to international jurisprudence, there is a significant principle which says that the location of islands determines how much maritime area they would get. That's the basic principle. How much maritime area an island could get all depends on its location. Why is it dependent on location? Because of this non-encroachment principle. An island cannot, obstruct or cut off the coastal projection of a coastal state, because islands are regarded as something secondary geographical features. How can I say this second geographical features about islands? Actually, there is a clear division between the law on entitlement and law on delimitation. So international law makes a very clear division between law on entitlement of islands to the maritime areas and the law on the delimitation. So these two sets of legal principles are significantly separated from each other. So that means islands are entitled to the continental shelf doesn't mean that in the delimitation they would get equal maritime areas with the coastal states. There is no correlation between two different issues. So delimitation law says that islands are comparatively secondary geographical elements compared to the coastal country. So that's why they shouldn't cut off the coastal projections. They shouldn't significantly cut off the coastal projections of a coastal country. That's why Turkey says that Greek islands should not have continental shelf. Although they are entitled to the continental shelf, doesn't mean that they would get continental shelf in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Let's take the example of Meis, Castellarizo, for example. Very small island, 10 square kilometers or something. But you cannot allow this island to cut off the coastal projection of Turkey according to the related principles. If you look at this island of Cyprus, it's a very short coastline and it cannot be on the same scale with Turkey according to the international jurisprudence on maritime delimitation. So finally, what can be done in Eastern Mediterranean to settle the disputes legally? As I described, all the maritime agreements so far made are all disputed. They are objected to, so that makes a very complicated situation in practice and affecting the natural resources survey or other activities. So there is only one option, I think, legally speaking. All the related countries should come together and revise these existing international agreements. Otherwise, it would not be possible to, move forward without any tension. So, as the Turkish president proposed, the related countries should come together and discuss the maritime boundaries together, as international law, obliges to the littoral countries of such a small sea part. So they should come together, revise the agreements, they make it quite, matching to each other, and that would be able to move forward. I cannot say, many things about these political aspects, but I can only say that that's the legal way. On all other politics should be adjusted according to this, aim, legally speaking, aim to settle the maritime dispute in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Thank you very much for listening.
We thank you very much for this good presentation on the map with the Mediterranean situation. So today we come to a point that there is a legal issue on the maps to be done to make cooperative works in the energy sector. Before these legal issues, investments cannot be applied, cannot be made. They will not be viable and feasible. So there is a study to be done in between the regional countries to come to a point for mutual benefits to use these resources for their own. But we should do it all together. First, we should come to a point on the maps, on the conflicted areas. With good willings, as Orin mentioned, we can do some cooperative studies on this map issue so that we can come to an investment point. We see that the energy prices are going high, so it will become a good benefit to come to a point altogether. I thank you very much for this cooperative and useful presentations, and this way we come together with academic view on the conflicts and solutions. So we think that there are solutions easily to be overcome for the challenges, both for the HMS side and both for the Turkish universities. We thank very much for this way of looking for the academic field strategies to make peaceful and to make useful projects in the region. By this way, I thank very much for the participants and also the TESPAM to make us come together and benefit from this good, useful ideas. Thank you very much. See you on another panel on a next time. TESPAM will go on doing this civil initiative on its site and keep watching us as TV Energy from Turkey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Türkiye Enerji Stratejileri ve Politikaları Araştırma Merkezi, kısa adıyla TESPAM Başkanı Oğuzhan Akyener.
Hem hidrokarbon hem yenilenebilir noktasında Türkiye birçok alanda yerli kaynaklarını kullanma konusunda önemli adımlar atıyor ve atmaya devam ediyor.
Ulusal bazda enerji probleminin çözülmesi için bence lokal bazda kendi enerjisini kendi üreten şehirler haline gelmemiz gerekiyor.
Evet, kıymetli TV enerji takipçileri, TESPAM takipçileri, Türkiye Enerji Stratejileri ve Politikaları Araştırma Merkezi'nin düzenlemiş olduğu yeni bir panelle karşınızdayız.
Biz burada bunları göstererek uluslararası politikadaki etkilere değinmeye çalışıyoruz. OPEC toplantısına kadar diğer etmenlerin neredeyse etkisi sıfırdı.
Bizim 18 milyar dolarla bu gazı siz Yunanistan'a ulaştırmış oluyorsunuz.
Irak'ın Aydınlık Yüzü Türkmeneli Televizyon'dan merhabalar. Enerji Arayüz programının yeni bölümünde karşınızdayız.
TESPAM Başkanı ve enerji uzmanı Oğuzhan Akgener bugün burada bizimle.
Lakin Türkiye'nin bu noktada hakları ihlal edilmeye çalışılıyor.
Enerji hattında bu haftaki konumuz TESPAM Başkanı Oğuzhan Akgener'di.
Kendi alanında bu sondaj ve sismik gibi alanlarda yerli teknolojiyi geliştiriyor, yerli know-how'ı geliştiriyor. Bu da çok önemli.